come. This very day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to all the king's officials that they have heard the behavior of the queen. Thus there will be excessive contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal decree go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it will not be altered, that Vashti shall come no more before King Xerxes, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. When the king's decree, which he will make, is proclaimed throughout all his empire, for it is great, all wives will honor their husbands, both great and small. And the reply pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. When he sent letters to all the then he sent letters to all the king's provinces, to each province in its own script, and to every people in their own language, that each man should be master in his own house and speak in the language of his own people. Good morning. Chapter 2, Esther made queen. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus, I think it's worse every time, subsided, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what had been decreed against her. Then Xerxes. Thank you. Okay. King Xerxes. So the A is silent altogether. I might can get that out of my mouth every time. Thank you. After these things, when the wrath of King Xerxes subsided, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's servants who attended him said, let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan, the citadel, into the women's quarters, under the custody of Hegai, the king's eunuch, custodian of the women. And let beauty preparations be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This thing pleased the king, and he did so. I wonder if I'm supposed to be using the A or if it's just silent. Because it is spelled way different in here. I wonder why that is. Like how the spellings are completely different in there. It is weird. Because it's Ahasuerus. Like it's not even... Weird. Anyway, we'll roll with it. Because normally things are similar. Even if there's a little bit of change in spelling or whatever. Normally it's very... Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that too. Because I didn't realize... because I'm normally always in my New King James or my interlineal. I go back and forth with my interlineal, but I don't read from my interlineal. I read from my New King James. So I did not realize that. I'll definitely be looking into it too. We'll have to get back to each other on that one. In Shushan, the citadel, there were a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, from Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and beautiful. When her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it was when the king's command and decree were heard, and when many young women were gathered at Shushan the citadel under the custody of Hegai, that Esther also was taken to the king's palace into the care of Hegai, the custodian of the women. Now the young woman pleased him, and she obtained his favor, so he readily gave beauty preparations to her, besides her allowance. The 7 choice maidservants were provided for her from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maidservants to the best place in the house of the women. If I'm in the book of Esther, I just started chapter 2, and that's what they're referring to. So I'm guessing the book of Esther. I know chapters 1 and 2. They're saying the NIV has a completely different spelling for the king, who's the king in the first couple chapters. Or he might be the king through the whole thing. I don't know, because several times it changes hands. But I think I'm thinking of a different book. Now the young woman, please. We just read that. Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it. And every day Mordecai paced in front of the court of the women's quarters to learn of Esther's welfare and what was happening to her. Each young woman's turn came to go in to the king Xerxes after she had completed 12 months' preparation, according to the regulations for the women, for thus were the days of their preparation apportioned: 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with perfumes and preparations for beautifying women. I wonder if that's when like makeup and stuff started. Okay, it may just be translations, yeah. Thus prepared, each woman went to the king, and she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the woman's quarters to the king's palace. In the evening she went, and in the morning she returned to the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz. No, sir. Hey, go lay down. Or come here. That's fine too. She returned to the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch who kept the concubines. She would not go into the king again unless the king delighted in her and called her by name. Now when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, to go into the king, she requested nothing but what Haggai, the king's eunuch, the custodian of the women, advised. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into the royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast, the feast of Esther, for all his officials and servants, and he proclaimed a holiday in the provinces and gave gifts according to the generosity of a king. When virgins were gathered together a second time, Mordecai sat within the king's gate. Now Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai as when she was brought up by him. Hey, good morning. Glad you can make it. Now Esther had not revealed her family. I've just read that part, but we'll read it again. Now Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai as when she was brought up by him. In those days, while Mordecai sat within the king's gate, 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Xerxes. I got it wrong again. Okay, and see, in my interlinear Bible, Old Testament is translated in Hebrew. New Testament is translated in Greek. So I would probably go with the Hebrew version because my interlinear Bible and my Strong's Concordance that goes along with that, they translate all the Old Testament. They translate the Old Testament in Hebrew. They say that's the closest translation for Old Testament. And the New Testament they translate in Greek. From my understanding, it's the closest to the, I guess, language it's being translated from. I'm not sure exactly, but I don't think I have none of my mods in here. My squirrels are always tired, girl. Yeah, I'm pretty sure mine does too. I don't think I've read through Esther in it, but I go back and that's how I find my correlations and then look up some of the meanings behind some stuff. Would I don't think none of my Bible bouncers are in here. Would one of y'all like to be one? If that one keeps being a nuisance. If they don't put any more comment, I'll got you, Valor. I'm gonna add you. Maybe I do. Valor. Add moderator. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple. You can tell by the profile pictures that they're probably going to be trouble. Normally when they drop that little pink heart, they're just trying to advertise something we don't want advertised here. So you don't have to block them. You can just mute them, Miss Christine. I think I just made you a mod. You should be mod ready. All right, let's try to get through a couple. Well, I got a little bit more time. We might finish. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. And when an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on gallows, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. Chapter 3, Haman's plot to destroy the Jews. After these things, King Xerxes promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha. Sorry about the background noise, y'all. My dogs, like I said, they always get riled up when I read, and we're just going to pretend like they're not there. Get behind me, Satan. I ain't worried about you. But it never fails. If we read after dinner, it's the same thing. It's like every time I pull out my Bible. Yeah. I'm actually got my phone stuff propped up on my interlinear Bible right now. Yeah, it's all right. I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. We paying them no attention. After these things, King Xerxes promoted Haman and the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. I cannot say that word. Agagite. That G-A-G in the middle of a word gets me every time. Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman. For so the king had commanded concerning him, but Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" Now it happened, when they spoke to him daily, and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes, the people of Mordecai. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Xerxes, they cast pur, that is, the lot, before Haman to determine the day and the month, until it fell on the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, "There is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not fitting for the king to let them remain." If it pleases the king, let a decree be within that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, and bring it to the king's treasury. So the king took the signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, "The money and the people are given to you. Do with them as seems good to you." Then the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month, and a decree was written according to all that Haman commanded, to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, to the officials of all people, to every province according to its scripts, and to every people in their language. In the name of King Xerxes it was written and sealed with the king's signet ring. And the letters were sent by couriers into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. A copy of the document was to be issued as law in every province, being published for all people, that they should be ready for that day. The couriers went out, hastened by the king's commands, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan, the citadel. So the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed. Chapter 4, Fasting among the Jews. When Mordecai learned all that had happened, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city. He cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went as far as the front of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. In every province where the king's command and decree arrived, there was great among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her, and the queen was deeply distressed. Then she sent garments to clothe Mordecai and take his sackcloth away from him, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, whom he had appointed to attend to her, and she gave him a command concerning Mordecai to learn what and why this was. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the city square that was in front of the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay in the king's treasuries to destroy the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the written decree for their destruction, which was given at Shushan, that he might show it to Esther and explain it to her, that he might command her to go into the king to make supplication to him and plead before him for her people. See, because the king doesn't know yet that Esther is actually of Jewish descent. He doesn't know, but he favored her and he crowned her queen, even without knowing so. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a command for Mordecai. All the king's servant and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king who has not been called, he has but one law, put all to death, except the one whom the king holds out the golden scepter, that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the king these 30 days. So they told Mordecai Esther's words, and Mordecai told them to answer Esther, "Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan, and fast for me. Neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and so I will go to the king, which is against the law. If I perish, I perish." She's getting her war face on. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther commanded him. Chapter 5, The Courage of Esther. Now it happened on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, across from the king's house, while the king sat on his royal throne in the royal house, facing the entrance of the house. Aww, you're gonna make me cry. That's so sweet. Esther was a very strong, courageous woman. That's a beautiful name for any young little girl. That's beautiful. I'm sorry to hear that, though. Now it happened on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, across from the king's house, while the king sat on his royal throne in the royal house, facing the entrance of the house. I know, but I'm sure it still hurts, and I'm sorry. I'll say an extra little prayer for you today. And I'm trying not to cry. So it was, when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you up to half the kingdom." So Esther answered, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him." Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, that he may do as Esther has said." They are full of it this morning. My dogs, that is. Good morning. And the king said to her, "What do you wish, Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you up to half the kingdom." So Esther answered, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him." Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, that he may do as Esther said." So the king and Haman went to the banquet that Esther had prepared. At the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? It shall be granted you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom, it shall be done." Then Esther answered and said, "My petition and request is this. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I prepare for them." Sorry if I'm being loud. I'm trying to talk over the dogs running across the floor and sounding like a herd of something. So if I'm getting too loud, just let me know. I'm just trying to talk over them because they sound really loud to me. I can only imagine what they sound like to y'all. "If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said." So Haman went out that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and that he did not stand or tremble before him, he was filled with indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home, and he sent and called for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Okay. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home, and he sent and called for his friends with his wife Zeresh. Then Haman told them of his great riches, the multitude of his children, everything in which the king had prompted him, and how he had advanced him above the officials and servants of the king. Moreover, Haman said, "Besides, Queen Esther invited no one but me to come in with the king to the banquet that she prepared, and tomorrow I am again invited by her along with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it. Then go merrily with the king to the banquet." And the thing pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. Chapter 6. Haman forced to honor Mordecai. That night the king could not sleep. So one was commanded to bring the book of the records of the chronicles, which they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, the doorkeepers, who had sought to lay hands on King Xerxes. Welcome back, Peach. Then the king said, "What honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" And the king's servants who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." So the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to suggest that the king hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. The king's servants said to him, "Haman is there, standing in the court." And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king asked, "What shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?" And Haman answered the king, "For the man whom the king delights to honor." Dude, go lay down. Y'all go lay down. Normally y'all sleeping this time of the morning. And Haman answered the king, For the man whom the king delights to honor, let a royal robe be brought which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let this robe and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that he may array the man whom the king delights to honor. Then parade him on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. Then the king said to Haman, hurry, take the robe and the horse, as you have suggested, and do so for Mordecai, the Jew, who sits within the king's gate. Leave nothing undone of all that you have spoken. So Haman took the robe and the horse, arrayed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the city square, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights in honor. Yes, ma'am, you can, Miss Kayla. 22. Thank you for pinning that. Robin. And her sister. I'm sorry to hear that. So much sickness and loss and everything lately. It's just, it's around here too. So definitely be praying hard for that one. So yeah, anybody that's got prayer requests. Oh no, oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll definitely be praying hard for that, because the whole circumstance around that is just horrible. Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's horrible. That's the world we live in, guys, and that's why we've got to keep our nose in this word, and we've got to keep our faith in God, and because it's not going to get any better. And we've got to stay firm, and we've got to stay strong, and we've got to, you know, pray and take care of those who need us, you know. And people in situations like that, you know, they need people to lift them up. They need people to hold them up and support them in times like this, because they're not able to hold themselves up. You know, kind of like a woman is to a man. I mean, we're to support, you know, our husbands, and we're to, you know, hold them up on the days that they're weak. And I mean, we've got to do that for each other. And, you know, even non-believers who are in situations like that, we've got to be ready to be their support, and to be the ones who lift them up and keep them from falling into a dark place, you know, because in a time like that, it is so easy to go to a dark place. I've not that specific, but in a situation like that, I mean, I can't even imagine, you know, my situations and the losses I've suffered, you know, were bad enough. I couldn't imagine it being something on that level, you know, so I'm glad she has you. We're going to pray for her mental state. We're going to pray for the whole situation. I know the entire family needs it right now. I can't imagine, but that a situation like that can pull us to a deep, dark place. And I'm glad she has you, Kayla. You know, if she tries to shut you out, you just keep letting her know that you're there. Don't let her close herself